7 after. I think everybody that needs to be here
You're
is
live.
here for now. All right, excellent. And
You have one person in the audience, Memorial Tabernacle Church.
excellent, excellent. All right, well,
Welcome.
we want to welcome everybody from the community that's joining us today and our panel as we get started for tonight's Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc Committee. Tonight, Wednesday, December 17th, we will possibly be joined by Commissioner Riles. Commissioner Jackson Castain will not be able to make it tonight, and Chair Emerita Peterson will likely join us as she always does a few minutes late when she's done with her commitments. But for right now, we will go ahead and kick off tonight's meeting. And bear with me one second as I pull up where we left off. All right. So essentially, we had several revisions that we discussed last week that Captain Hubbard was going to go ahead and update some of the documents. And remind me, Captain, we've chucked through the majority of the list now, right? And how much of the list do we still have remaining? So the ones that are below the highlighted ones that are still remaining.
Correct. This is where the third offense is termination. And then after this, we go back through the smaller, I guess, less serious issues that I don't think under any circumstance would result in termination. We would have to filter through those, but that should be pretty quick.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So in terms of our meetings, moving, or actually, we could, yeah, let's actually look at so the public knows too, because I anticipate this will be our last meeting of the year. And so we'll be picking up in the new year. So this is a good place to leave off in terms of the revisions of where we left off last time. And then if we could get through the rest of this list tonight, that may be a good place to take a pause for the new year, but definitely open for suggestions or thoughts on that as we get started. And I pass it to you, Captain.
Thank you. Okay, we had a lot of conversation. You all can see my screen, I hope, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. 31470 uses of privileged information, and we came up with a class 1 and class 2 section. The class 1 section, I'll go ahead and read this, and I believe that we left off with not changing this except for adding the laws. Members and employees are prohibited from using highly sensitive confidential information gained through their position as a law enforcement officer or department employee for their own or another person's financial or other personal benefit. Highly sensitive confidential information includes any information that the member knew or reasonably should have known that it was not available to the public, was obtained through the member's official duties or access to department systems, records, or resources, falls into one or more of the following categories: criminal justice information from restricted law enforcement databases, CLETS, CJIS, DMV, etc., information related to ongoing criminal investigations, victim witness, and confidential informant information, information that could compromise officer safety or investigative integrity, information used for financial gain or to benefit criminal activity, information protected by attorney-client privilege related to criminal or sensitive administrative matters. So the addition here is the applicable laws. I think I covered them. I do want legal to put their eyes on it, but it's California Penal Code, etc. You have all these, and then Government Code 6200, another California Penal Code 502, and then the Vehicle Code 180845. And to Chair Emeritus Peterson's point, not it's referencing these, not taking in context what we think they mean, so the reader can know to look these up and cross-reference it with this section.
Captain Hubbard, should we add the phrase included but not limited to in case something developed or something we overlooked? I just thought that may be a good idea.
Okay, no problem. Okay, we then have a class 2 section for this. We went back and forth about sensitive versus confidential, but so class 2 is more for the sensitive but not necessarily confidential. Members and employees are prohibited from using sensitive information gained through their position as a law enforcement officer or department employee for personal benefit for themselves or for another person. Confidential information. I think that's where I got it wrong. Sensitive. Sensitive information includes any information that the member knew or reasonably should have known that it is not available to the public, was obtained through the member's official duties or access to department systems, records, or resources, does not rise to the level of a class 1 violation. This includes, but is not limited to, non-sensitive information exempt from public disclosure under Government Code 6254, internal, operational, or administrative information not intended for public release, personnel information about other employees, information about department operations, staffing, or procedures not publicly available, minor or inadvertent disclosure of information without intent to gain benefit. 62. All right, any questions on that? Oh, do I even have government code 60? Okay, I got it. All right, any questions on that? All right, moving on then. For prohibited activity on duty, sexual activity, we changed the first offense from a 2-day suspension, as you see here, to termination, to a 10-day suspension to termination. That's the first offense. The second offense remains a termination. Okay. For obedience to laws, felony, serious misdemeanor, we talked about how serious misdemeanor is really not defined and can be confusing and unnecessarily overlapping with felony. So we wanted to put this as a standalone felony section and change this from an S10, 10-day suspension to termination for the first offense to termination, and the second offense being termination. And then there is another, if you remember, misdemeanor or infraction category that's a little bit different than this, but that's where the misdemeanor would fit under. And there's also a driving under the influence standalone section. We talked a lot about insubordination, failure or refusal to obey a lawful order. We changed this to a 5-day suspension to termination for the first offense. The second offense is a 10-day suspension to termination, and the third offense is termination. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
There's some notes on this, I think, of some of the discussion that we had as well about just, officers having multiple bites at the apple. I believe we were having a conversation last week around this.
Yeah,
But yeah, go ahead,
I like to
Deacon.
revisit that. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to have an officer who's failing to obey a lawful order. Now, if he misunderstood something, that's one thing. So that's the one bite, but you don't get a second bite, and you surely don't get a third bite. What could you absolutely say that it justifies an officer justifying? I'm not going to obey the lieutenant's direct order. I want you to stand on this corner and look in this direction. It's vital. I need you to stand here and look in that direction. and then you come around and the guy is at a coffee shop sitting down. Hey, I got tired of standing up there. No, I don't understand that. I don't. So make me understand why this person. We should go easy on the guy.
Um, I'll give it a try. It's not so much going easy. I think the a tipping point for these types of allegations, there are two things. One, going back to the example you gave a couple weeks ago about you being ordered to crawl underneath the house, right? So
Right.
safety. So there could be a counter argument from the employee that it's unsafe. Two, one can say, well, it wasn't lawful. It was an unlawful order. Okay. So now we're arguing over those two things, and that could be mitigating or aggravating. So
But
let's
I
say,
was, but I was under not to excuse me for interrupting you, but I was under the understanding that what we're looking at is someone who has been found responsible. We're just talking about the punishment now, or the
yes,
discipline. The subject officer has been responsible for refusing to obey a lawful order. There's no argument about was he right or wrong. If it was an argument about if he was right or wrong, didn't understand it, or it was life threatening or whatever, uh, that would have come out before we got to this point to mitigating to dis,
mhm,
to distributing discipline. So we're at the point of distributing discipline. You have
right,
been found responsible for disobeying a lawful direction by your superior officer, and it's the first time you did it, and
Hmm.
I don't. It could be some mitigating factors. You know, lost your wife a week ago or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, you're not at your best. Okay, you know, you get 3 days off. You get 4 days off. You know, you. But the second time, what can you say the second time that he gets the third time?
Hmm.
It just doesn't make sense.
mhm. Oh, yeah, go ahead,
So,
sir.
so to just so I make sure I understand, um, in the example that we're talking about in terms of like let's say it was an unlawful order and that's being reviewed, then that wouldn't even get to this point because they would determine that
It
was
was
justified,
unlawful.
right? You wouldn't get in
Yes,
trouble for that in the first place. We don't want somebody to even go through the discipline process if it was
precisely.
or okay, so I'm seeing your face, Captain. So then the other question is, unless if you're doing like body cam review or whatever, like internal, risk management that you're doing, if bottom line or CPRA is reviewing something, if they're saying, well, regardless of kind of the factors, the reason why, or I guess, okay, hold on. No, now I'm confused myself. If it's unlawful, you're saying if it is determined to be unlawful, they could still sustain that finding and then later on have it be mitigated down. Because my understanding is what Deacon's saying is that
Yeah,
it wouldn't even be sustained in the
it
first place.
yeah. There's no obligation
Excuse
to
me.
obey an unlawful order. No one can order you to to go rob that bank, or hit this guy handcuffed in the head with your pistol.
Right,
You can't. No one can order you to do that. And
right.
so the issue of it being lawful has been settled. What we are right now is at the point of the subject officer has been found responsible for refusing. We don't care what his reasons are. He refused to obey a lawful order. Okay, so the first bite, he gets a discipline range from 3 days to termination. I can live with that. There should not be any second one. If he does it the second time, he's fired. If he's found guilty, he's fired. He doesn't get 5 days this time, and then because and then the third time you do it, now we're at the point where we think, you're just an obstinate officer who disrespects the chain of command. We can't run a police department like that. People have to do what they're told. Period. If they don't do what they're told, then we have no control. And lack of control, that's how you get civil litigations.
Yeah.
So I couldn't think. I don't even know why we're here. It seems so obvious to me. It's black and white to me. You know, matter of fact, 3 days should probably be 5 days to termination.
Yeah, we do have that change here. Change the first offense S5 to 10.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't look down. Okay,
So,
that makes sense to me. But why a person gets a second and third chance? It's just the culture of Oakland Police Department that don't want to hold officers accountable for this kind of stuff.
all right. So to start, I can't think of a case where we had more than one sustained finding against a member for insubordination.
I mean,
That's the first one, right?
yeah, and the person wasn't terminated. I get it. You've been on the department 15 years, and whatever reason you weren't at your best. You I don't know, something's going
No,
on
no,
in
go
your
ahead,
life.
Captain. I want to hear this.
Yeah, you don't like this guy, and you just lost it. You blew it. Okay, we're not gonna torch your 10-year career because of that one episode. We're gonna punish you, but you don't get a second bite at this.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. So I guess so we have to look at it two ways. Right now it reads obey a lawful order. Okay. The sergeant who told you to crawl underneath the house, was that a lawful order or unlawful order?
That was a lawful order.
Okay. So unfortunately, this is how internal affairs looks at it. They don't, and we're the same size. Like I'm 6'4". I would also probably say no to that. It makes me uncomfortable even like thinking that I would do something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have. With my
Right.
vest on, I'd have got trapped under there.
But internal affairs would sustain myself and you because they look at it in a very binary way. They say, was it a lawful order? Yes. Did the sergeant tell you to do it? Yes. Did you say no? Yes. That's a sustained finding.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So now the chief is has to look at it through the lens of what this matrix says. If he or she is going to mitigate below the standard by saying, well, listen, that I think not unlawful, but it's awful, if you will. We have some task 45 issues where it's a disparity of discipline type conversation.
Got
Okay.
it.
Okay. Now, the chances of this happening twice are very rare, and that's where I would agree with you on that. But if we create it so tight where let's say this hypothetically is a second case, now the chief or the discipline committee is forced with just termination. That really paints them in a corner for these very rare situations.
Then I'm taking it to court. Then I'm taking it to court, and I'm trying to get my job back, and I'm arguing it like that. And this is the same sergeant that it's a rare coincidence, but he's telling me to do something again that's life threatening for me. And if you insist on not hearing that, and not dealing with him, and I said, look, I'll die if I take this risk. I'm not doing it. Now, then we go to court on this disciplinary action. But but the way you have it written here gives an insubordinate officer 3 times to not follow direction, and that does not make sense. It does more harm than in terms of tightening up esprit de corps and tightening up the obedience to a superior officer's direction. That's why we make folks sergeants and lieutenants and captains. And the facts have been laid out here, and the facts have come back saying this officer disobeyed a lawful order, and I've listened to all the mitigating circumstances. Yes, he was wrong. First time, okay, we'll give him learn from it, but you don't get a second shot at it. It does not make sense. What you're building in to your rank and file is that you you're creating obstinate officers. You're creating people who are disrespecting sergeants.
Yeah.
Now I appreciate this conversation, and I'm torn because at face value, I agree with much of what Deacon Laus has presented. I don't. The part I'm torn is you gave a pretty good example, right? I mean, if that first one you just had that bad day, then that second one actually ends up being a situation like the one we've discussed. I guess my question would be: would the chief have the discretion to say, again, technically, it's a sustainable offense because of this. But given all of the mitigating circumstances, even before we hand out discipline, considering we actually want to support our officers and say, technically it may be, but we're not going to sustain on this. I guess I would love a world like that, but I'm guessing where that would become a problem is with the consistency of discipline. And once it becomes that subjective, then that could open the door with all kinds of other things that we've had problems with. So that's where I'm torn because of those things. And I understand that, in this scenario where you had the bad day first and it's like, all right, you're not going to do that again, but now you already have a sustained thing. And then you end up getting a situation where you're asked to do something like the situation we discussed, not having that option for a third strike makes it difficult. And then you could imagine for us, it's a negative situation because then we're getting, all the blame for our disciplinary process being too rigid and taking, police off the streets. And secondly, I, and to your and I, as much as I agree with, yeah, that I'm taking it to court, like I also wouldn't want that happening all the time because that's part of the problem of what we have right now is too many cases in arbitration and being fought already. It's like I think this is what we're trying to entangle a little bit.
You're not fixing what you want to fix by establishing this. This is like you got a little leak in the dam. So to fix the leak in the dam, let's lower the water level. So now you ain't got enough water to nourish your community. Why? Because the dam doesn't hold the required amount for it to be effective. This is like, I don't know if when you guys were in college, I'm sure you read the book Les Miserables. That's the question. The guy stole a loaf of bread. Okay, he stole a loaf of bread, but hounding him for the rest of his life does not fix the problem because we gotta follow the rules. I'm saying in this case, if you got an officer that is being disobedient to a superior officer, that destroys your command authority over your officers. That increases the liability window for the city's general fund. It also creates the problem within the department because, hey man, you let Reggie off last week. We know you let, last year, he was disobedient. You let him off, and that's his third time. So the problem just gets exponentially greater. It doesn't reduce it. We might as well not even have this kind of disciplinary rule. Or do you write these disciplinary rules and hope people will obey them? No, that's not being a commander. You write disciplinary actions and you expect people to obey them. You don't hope that they obey them.
Mm.
And you get what you inspect. So if you're not in front of folks and in their face and saying, I told you to stand on this corner and I told you to look south. Why are you in this cafeteria? That that's very risky. That's that's working against the city and the city's liability. The liability window just gets opened. So we don't want people doing this. We don't want them becoming martyrs within the department. We don't want them becoming historical fact that the third or the fourth officer can come in and say, "You set precedent." No, you get one bite at it. 5 days termination the first time. You don't get no second time.
Uh, these two words, failure or refusal, do you think that they should be interconnected? Because I would say that failure, refusal is you refuse. I mean, I think that word is far worse. Like I told you to do something, you just flat out refused. Failure can mean many different things where I can then turn around and say, I misunderstood what you said. I didn't hear what you said. And but the problem is if we put in failure with refusal, it results in the same outcome.
But Brian, we we we're supposed to look at this. I'm under the impression, was under the impression that we're supposed to look at this as if the officer had already went through the review process and it's been found that he failed. So that failure is has to be, I would think, something that wasn't about confusion. You just put a poor effort. You were supposed to be here at 8 o'clock on that corner looking south, and you showed up at 9:30 because you thought it would be better for you to do something else before you went to your assignment that I gave you a direct order to do. You failed. This is not confusion. Confusion has to be all vetted out in the process. If the guy says, no, I was at the corner. He told me to look north. No, I told you to look south. I didn't hear that. Okay. All right. I don't believe you, but we're gonna give you a couple of 3 days off. And next time, if you don't understand an order, don't salute me until you understand it. And it's my job. I would ask the lieutenant, did you ask him if he understood it? Did you? And if yeah, he told it back to me. What I said to him. Oh no, I don't remember that. No, that's failure. Okay, you don't remember it, but I remember it. So that's a failure. I think failure or refusal is fine. I just don't think they need two bites at the apple of looking at a commanding officer and saying, I'm not going to do something. And if we don't do it to support our commanding officers, we ought to do it just to prevent the liability to the city general fund. Because that's why you're there, Commander. That's why you're there. You're there to make sure that we do things decently and in order by the law.
Okay, so do we agree that these are my notes here? First,
I don't know. Is Kathy on? Kathy, what do you think
Yeah.
about this?
I just came in and I'm not sure what offense you're talking about.
Okay.
Is it failure or refusal to obey a lawful order or is it obedience to laws?
Well,
Or I'm sorry, report. Yeah, I
No,
think it is that one.
yeah.
Well,
It's
yeah, and
failure.
obedience to laws. Go ahead, Deacon.
Okay.
So what was the argument? And
The
Go
argument
ahead.
is the argument is if you look at 314 30-1, first offense is 3 days to termination. We increased that to 5 days to termination. But I'm arguing, why is this person getting a second shot at this? This individual, male or female, has been found responsible for the first time. Went through arbitration, went through the review process, the disciplinary process. It was found out that you failed or you refused to obey a lawful order. And so we're going to give you 5 days off, but because you got a great career, you've been pretty much, this is the only time you've ever had a problem, we'll don't do this again. So you get 5 days off. And then, but you don't get a second chance. And you surely don't get a third chance. So the second one should not be 10-day suspension or termination. It should be termination, just like the two above it.
I
So
have to agree
essentially,
with that because otherwise, if an officer is getting away with if he's refusing, or she is refusing or failing to obey a lawful order, um, other people will do it if they think, oh, this person got off.
That's
They got
right.
off easy. So, apparently they don't take this seriously.
We don't have any
Meaning the
control.
commanding officer doesn't take it seriously because they're saying, well, if you come to me again and lie, I'll just give you 10 days, 15 days suspension. Everyone knows that you have to obey your superiors. And there shouldn't be any back and forth about why you didn't obey a lawful order.
yeah, and so and hi Kathy, welcome. And so yeah, we've been picking up the discussion that we had from last week around this, and from that second offense, if that happens again, we just do the termination right there. And Captain Hubbard has presented, some examples of how that rigidity would lead to folks, being terminated if, and which led to that question, which I don't know if we quite answered in terms of, do we need to consider a difference between refusing an order or was the other term? Yeah. And so, and again, of course, I would love to look at things and on a case to case basis and even consider class 2 violations. But to Deacon's point, like once you open that up, then it just opens up that window of everybody being able to be like, well, it was just a mistake. I didn't flat out refuse, right? And that's hard to prove too. And I think, in trying to hold the line and setting the standard high, I think we've been doing a good job of being pretty consistent of kind of setting that bar high. And so I think in this case, and the fact of the matter is other eyes are going to look at this as well too and have, something to say about these recommendations, I'm sure, across the board. And so I think, I think we should just aim high, set that standard, and then see kind of where that lays from there. So I would actually put my vote with the second offense being a termination as well too.
All right.
Right. And if we're trying to change the culture of the department, we have to stop being so lax with things that are going wrong or officers that are committing offenses. That's just my belief. That if we're going to toe the line and change the culture of the department, then we need to start doing that, and not making excuses for officers who fail or refuse to obey a lawful order.
I also want to.
Any other job, you would be terminated. Maybe you'll get a second chance, but you're not gonna get a third chance for sure.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention also that, I know we run the risk of, when we continue to set the bar high, and when I say we, the Oakland Police Commission, often get accused of weaponizing the discipline process. And I want to, and in a perfect world, I would love for us hey, I manage programs in a community-based organization. I've given second, third, fourth, fifth chances because we see the real lives of people and how, so I'm very compassionate of the way that is. But unfortunately, we run the risk because of Oakland Police Department's history and the culture that we are trying to kind of just change a little bit and trying to get course correct more consistently, especially for the long term, that subjectivity becomes weaponized, right? If I'm going to get accused of weaponizing the discipline process because we're being so harsh on the standards that we're setting, there's also a practice of, if I create class 2 considerations on many of these offenses, if we say, yeah, we'd love to have discretion and be like, oh, you're just having a bad day, I love you, don't even trip, man, you do a great job, like I would with my staff, right? My staff aren't sworn officers. My staff don't have guns. My staff don't, have the responsibility that sworn officers do, right? We're just social workers, right? And so we have other sets of standards that we have to adhere to. And so I would love to present those options and that flexibility. But one, as you mentioned earlier, we're trying to have consistency in the discipline and have it not be so all over the place. But also, unfortunately, folks weaponize that and say, hey, oh, my bad, I didn't hear that, or I didn't, oh, there's an out this way. Oh, I'm not going to get fired into a third time doing this, right? And those loopholes get exploited. And I would love to say they don't, but they do. We have a history of that. So I think right now I do have to side with it continuing to be tight and with what our standards and what our expectations are. And then we could always revisit this down the road. And I'm sure, again, this is all going to be up for other opinions and negotiations down the road anyway. So I think we should continue to set the bar high. So I just want to say that. And I see Chief of Staff has her hand up as well. But Kathy, do you have any final thoughts on that real quick before we go to Chief of Staff?
Yeah, so I'm putting myself in the position also of being a chief. If I were a chief of police, I don't think that I'd want to continue the employment of an officer who um, fails or refuses to obey an order.
Can't trust them.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely cannot trust them. And each officer, as they leave that building, what goes with them is the cost of doing business in Oakland as a police officer. The city's resources are backed behind that officer. You can't say on one hand, we're going to send these officers and give them more training, and intensive training on these crucial issues. Teaching somebody to go to school and how to tie their shoes or polish their shoes and make them shine. That ain't where the money hits. It's when you don't do what you were told to do, or you don't do what your general orders or the law says you must do. You shall do. So if you think your police officer discretion is so broad that depending on how you feel, this is how you're going to apply the law, then Oakland's city general fund is at risk. Taxpayers' dollars are at risk. That's why we in the mess we in now. And if we can't face that, Ricardo, you said, well, they say we're weaponizing. Yeah, this is a fight. We're in a battle. We need to understand what we're dealing with here. They're writing books about disobedience. That's what the writers come out at night. That is what that book was about. A history of disobedience. You got Superior Court judges saying they'll twist themselves into a pretzel trying not to hold people accountable. That's what we're fighting. It has nothing to do with what I do for a living, what you do for a living, or whatever. It has to do with what has transpired in Oakland by the Oakland Police Department and how they view administering justice. That's what we're dealing with. And hey, this is gonna offend some people, but hey, let it offend them.
Let's go to Chief of Staff. You still got your hand up, and then we'll go back to Captain Hubbard for some final edits on this thing.
Perfect. I just wanted to let our visitor at Memorial Tabernacle Church know that if you would like to chime in or you have something to say, you can just raise your hand and I will unmute you and you're welcome to join the conversation. That's it, Chair.
Thank you, Micah. Yeah, so I'm okay with this how it's written. I appreciate everyone's comments. These examples would be a lot easier for me if I actually had a legitimate example, and I don't. Since taking over internal affairs, I can only think of one insubordination case that I dealt with in my tenure here, and it's a unique one, as they always are, and there was a lot of discussion, but I have not had a second offense, if you will. So I mean, I get it. I just hope it's not me trying to get soft on any of this stuff. I just want it to be defend we can defend it later, when things come up.
Well, we surely can defend it, and even if we defend it and lose, it's better to do it that way, because it's just like it's the writing of it. A good sign is something that's visible, it's understood, and the expectation is that everybody is to obey it. It's not pulling somebody over and giving them a ticket.
Yeah.
You saw that stop sign, so what did you do? I stopped. Did you stop at 3 o'clock in the morning when nobody's on the street? Yep. Why do you do that? There's no traffic coming, because this is what I do. This is what the law says and what I must do. I don't ride through stop signs because nobody's on the street. So to write the policy, the policy is the guarantee to the obedience, because it's written well, and the disciplinary action is serious.
Okay. All right. Got it. Anything else on this section? All right. The last two, and these two things were actually merged together, but reporting violations, failure to report misconduct when required, and confidential reporting of misconduct. We elected to merge these two together. We did that months ago, just in our writing of that section. But we had a lengthy discussion about the seriousness of failing to report misconduct. And we decided for the first offense to kind of merge these two things together. So the first offense is a 15-day suspension and termination. The second offense is termination, and we removed the third offense, which was termination. So we just removed it completely. One thing that I actually dealt with this week, and I'll give you an example just by going to this section. So for reporting violations, I'll go over this briefly again without reading it. So class ones are the serious ones. Those are automatic referrals to internal affairs. Class twos, as long as there's no pattern of misconduct, we can handle those informally. Okay, unless it's an outside allegation. Okay. The weird thing about this is that we also require documentation, and it closes the circle as in, okay, you report it. Thank you very much for telling me I'm the watch commander. You also have to document it and include the date and time, location, names of all the parties involved, witnesses, detailed description, etc. And we were very clear when we first talked about this not to we're not telling the person to incriminate themselves. Like, don't confess, your crimes. Like that is going to be investigated. Where we run into problems with this, though, is what happens if they don't document it. So that I did exactly what I thought was correct, which is I called the watch commander, I reported my misconduct, but I failed this technical violation, if you will, of writing now this email. Are we going to hold people to the same standard of this entire section for you missed one of the two elements, which is the documentation? I actually dealing with that in similar cases now. So I open that up to all of you and whether we want to hold them to the same standard of discipline for that.
What are you saying that the exception would be?
So it's not so much an exception. I think there's the point of this section, and this is why it's such heavy on discipline, is really the heart of the negotiated settlement agreement, where it's the code of silence, right? So you see misconduct, misconduct, but you don't report it. But here I am reporting it. I see it, I report it, but then I fail to actually follow the other section of this, which is, I totally forgot to document, like send an email summarizing everything as required here. Are you saying now that I failed to report misconduct? Is it all or nothing, or is there a carve out for you reported it? Hey, you satisfied that, great job, but we can hold you accountable for not documenting, but it's not to the same level. We're going to give you a 15-day suspension.
So you're saying that they orally reported, but they didn't follow the written, they didn't write up or document in writing whatever
Right.
that violation was.
Yeah, right
Well,
here.
I think that documentation, how do you prove it? If you don't write something down, how do you prove it? Telling somebody something is just, if they report it out, it's hearsay.
That's right.
So you need something to be documented.
And
I
in
mean,
part,
I think that's a requirement of
Yeah.
being a police officer, that you document whenever you come into members of the public, or if you need to report another officer. But this is an important requirement.
yeah, I agree with you, Kathy. I think it's very important, but I don't think the onus of the following this falls on the reporting officer. It falls on the commanding officer again. You told me this. I want to see this in writing on my desk by blah 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 blah. So you got to build into this regulation that the getting of this in writing is the responsibility of the commanding officer, not just the responsibility of the witness. I need your witness statement right now. It's no different than when you're investigating a robbery or a rape or a burglary. I got to take a statement from you. I got to get a witness statement from you.
Well, I'm
You
thinking of one thing in particular. The officer who lived in San Francisco was with
okay,
his girlfriend, who was also a police officer,
okay,
and neither one of them reported the accident of him hitting
right,
a neighbor's car.
right.
They didn't document it at all, and I don't think anything ever happened to the
And that was a
woman.
crime.
And
It,
they both still have their jobs.
it was a crime. It
They
should have went
clearly failed this reporting requirement. Why are they still
exactly.
even employed?
Well, it was a crime. Why that case didn't go to the DA's office immediately is why what we're dealing with right now. This is why we have to be, like Ricardo says, we have to be serious about that. You know, either we're gonna do this right or we're gonna play games.
Captain, if someone is reporting misconduct, these are all the things right here that they have to report. And who documents that? Can you walk us through that process of what that looks like? Because I'm trying to understand the question too, is like if one part of that process, even though they did in the spirit of what the law was in terms of reporting that misconduct that they witnessed, they did that duty, but at some other part, whether it was documentation or any other part that they failed, is it an all or nothing? And my initial sentiment is, well, if it starts at counseling and training, then that already considers that possibility, maybe, because that seems pretty low, or else I would beg that it probably should start higher. But again, could you walk us through that process so we could see what an example of like a potential error could be, even though there was decent effort to do so?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to, again, make excuses or say it's okay to not do the quality of what we're expecting it to be, but I'm just trying to understand what kind of errors could occur post, like once somebody reports that misconduct, that they observe misconduct, what's the process that happens there, and what's the human error that could happen after that?
I'll refer to the M4.1 policy. And by the way, Chair, that policy is under commission review right now. I submitted that a few weeks ago. So you do have that. I know we talked about it many times at length. Okay. Well, I'm going to use criminal allegations. An officer gets arrested for driving under the influence. The arresting agency notifies the watch commander. The watch commander acknowledges it, notifies our CID, Criminal Investigations Division. They open up a criminal investigation. Okay. Internal Affairs, I get the phone call. Internal Affairs launches an investigation. The notifications go out. I talk about it in the high profile. We were very open about this. So the train has left the station. This is a full investigation. We interview the officer. Were you driving drunk? Yes, I had a bad night driving drunk. Okay, we're going to hold him responsible for obedience to laws. Hey, when you, after you got arrested, did you send an email saying that the date, time, location of the incident, name of all parties, witnesses, detailed description? No, I forgot to do that. Okay. The heart of the NSA is reporting misconduct. That was done. We did a full investigation. The officer was sustained for driving under the influence. But now we have a technical, what I would argue is a technical violation, because after they got out of jail, they forgot to send an email. Are we going to give them a 15-day suspension on top of the other discipline for missing this step?
Would that just be a mitigating factor for the other violation?
It's tough because now you got to think like the chief, right? So the chief now is in a position where they're saying 15-day suspension is a starting point. And to mitigate down from that, because they technically violated this section, they failed to report misconduct because they didn't do the documentation portion, right? Now the chief, if they're going to mitigate down, on paper, it looks like the chief got soft on reporting misconduct, when the details, that's not actually the case. So this is where the struggle that we have for these.
Again, this is in my view, this is another subtle little trickology going on here. Using your example, guy gets in an accident, bad driving, and then you have the case started and train has left the station and all of that. When he gets out, you didn't send us a written document of what happened and what you did. That's the responsibility of his supervisor. Why aren't they investigating that? Why would you go to a bank robbery and then tell the teller, submit to me tomorrow what happened? No, you sit there and
Reggie?
you take the investigation. You take the
Hello?
report. Yeah.
I can't hear you. You're breaking up really bad. Is it on my end or is anyone else experiencing
I
this?
think it's on your end, Miss Kathy. I can hear clearly. I don't know about everybody. We can hear clearly. You want
Now
to
I
try
can't
call
hear
back
anything. I'm
in?
going to sign out.
Okay.
You can go ahead. I got you. I'm following.
Again, this is this bit of regulation rule has to be changed, where the onus of getting the statement from the subject officer is not solely with the subject officer, for two reasons. One, the officer is will be isolated, peer pressures all over him, not to say anything, and just like you said, the impact of the blue wall of silence, all of that comes into play. You mitigate all of that when you say, no, I'm coming to get a witness statement from you. I'm getting a statement from you. What happened? And then we go through, he has rules that's in the law that protects him, and he can employ those rules or not. but the responsibility has to be on the commanding officers to get those statements. This is a way of people not wanting to come forward.
Okay, well, we can't take a statement from the subject of it because they're under a criminal investigation. So we can't compel them to give, we can't interview them. So what this says is
Then you can't interview them till the criminal case is over, right?
I mean, we can compel them in IA, but we can't give that statement to our investigator because it's compelled, right? So
Right.
can't use that against them criminally.
Okay, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not so interested in the criminal side. That I'll let that take care of itself. What we're talking about here is that you're saying, well, you don't want to give this guy 15 days on top of this because, he just forgot to give his statement. We should be saying you're going to give your statement on Tuesday. You got to come in and give us your statement. That's what the regulation said. We're going to keep it. We're not going to share it with our criminal side, but you got to come in and give a statement.
Okay. All right. I want to.
You're saying
But Captain, that's different than the email they have to send
Yeah.
within a certain time. Then I forgot what it was. That 72 hours or.
Yeah. So what we're saying is within 24 hours, they have to. This documentation requirement is to ensure that nothing slips through the cracks. As in, what was mentioned earlier is like, oh, I called Lieutenant so and so and reported the misconduct, and Lieutenant. That's where the documentation comes in. That protects really everyone, just like, and I would do this. Like, I don't want to be accused of not reporting misconduct, so I'm always going to put it in writing. That's a smart thing to do. I guess I'm looking at it as, I mean, we literally had this happen where the officer's in jail, and everything is reported. So it's not a cover up. It's just they didn't put it in writing of these facts, which I know we had this argument before about, well, how much is too much because we don't want us to order them to impeach themselves either. I mean, it has to be okay. I'm not, and just to be clear, I'm not saying make this go away. All I'm saying is, can we call it something else other than failing to report misconduct? Because it was reported. I'd rather call it more performance of duty because they missed a step of not documenting. Deacon, I hear what you're saying. I think absolutely, if I'm the watch commander, I should be the one making sure, hey, thank you for telling me, but I'm also telling you to put this in an email and I'm going to tell you what to say. So it's not, I'm sorry, I'm not going to tell you to incriminate yourself. You have to satisfy this policy or this MOR by putting this information in there. Absolutely.
And we ought to lay out in the policy what is required. On this date, who was involved, what happened, and what's the result, were you arrested or not? And that's it. It ought to be a form. It does not have, this is just notification. It does not have to go into detail where the person is impeaching himself when he has a constitutional right not to have to do that. So, but if it's just for notification, and we can prove that on such date, Reggie Lyles did report that he was involved in an activity that ended up in him being arrested for blah 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 blah. That could be in the form. Think about it.
Does this also pertain to peer-to-peer reporting? Like if an officer observes another officer and the requirement for them to report that, or is this different?
Yeah. So if let's say I'm with someone off duty and I witness them commit, let's say, a crime, I'm the report. So all this, it would be applicable to me because I'm the one reporting it.
Gotcha.
Right?
So if it were a form, it would just be who, what, when, where, how.
Yeah. I mean, we have it laid out here. It's dangerous if they're the subject because it's like detailed description of the alleged violation. Oh, I was out drinking and I decided to get in my car and drive. I mean, we're asking the officer to incriminate themselves, and that can be dangerous for the overall investigation. I don't want to do that.
Well, then we say then we change that detailed description of the alleged violation. All we got to say, were you charged with anything? They can put a code down. They don't have to go into details. I was drinking. I had 4 Jack Daniels. I left the bar at 8 o'clock. I couldn't put my key in the car, and I thought I was going north, but I was on the wrong side of the street. We don't need all of that. You got arrested. You were in an accident, and you got arrested. For what? 10851. I mean, drunk driving.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
not, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
For drunk driving. And,
Yeah.
and that's it. You're innocent until you're proven guilty. You know? So that could be a form. This in writing business, what is the purpose of it being in writing? So that it's been documented that the person did tell us at such and such time that they were involved in a behavior. And it's supposed to be a deterrent for taking that 3rd or 4th drink at the bar, knowing you got to drive all the way to Walnut Creek or wherever.
No doubt. I 100% agree that this should be done for many reasons. I guess I'm hung up on, are we saying that is equivalent to failing to report misconduct? Let's say you have the code of silence. You have the person who refuses to report misconduct. We're putting this person in the same category as them because they didn't document.
I think that's that's counterproductive, counterintuitive. If the person told his commanding officer verbally, now we got the officer testifying that's what I did, and we got the commanding officer saying yes, he did do this.
Right.
Okay, so
yes.
that's not a person trying to be nefarious. That's a person trying to obey the rules and regulations.
Exactly.
So the fact that it has to be in writing, I get why it has to be in writing. We want to have something tangible and etc. I get all of that.
Yeah.
But if it's done in 48 hours or 72 hours or 10 days later, it's still just as good. Why isn't it?
We would sustain for that. It would be sustained under failing to report. That's what I'm saying.
This is bad policy.
Okay.
I'm agreeing with you now. This is bad policy. This is writing a policy trying to get at something that's with the sledgehammer that's meaningless.
I understand.
The person is already told his commanding officer, I got arrested in Walnut Creek for drunk driving.
Yeah.
And I spent 4 hours in their holding cell, and then they let me go.
Yeah.
When did that happen? Yesterday. Okay, thank you. You got to put that in writing. And when you do back at work in 3 days. Okay, 3 days. I want that on my desk by the 4th day. That's it. It doesn't change anything because you can testify that he told me.
Sure.
So that I understand correctly, in that situation, there's a time limit when that report has to get. So then the commanding officer would tell them, all right, what that deadline, I want it on my desk by that time. If the officer then fails to do so by that deadline, you would have to sustain. Let's say he's later on is still following up. They're not, and then submits it later. You still have to sustain. And so the question is, because you improperly reported it, are you being sustained with the same harsh penalty for somebody that failed to report it outright? Because you made the effort to report it, you just didn't have you didn't come through with what I think I heard earlier, the performance of duty to follow through with the required documentation that follows that.
Yeah.
So that's what the question is right now, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's right.
I think we ought to build into the writing of the policy, if the subject officer verbally reported the situation, we recommend that the that in 72 hours it's it's placed in writing. Um, but I don't think you get 15 days off if you did it in a week's time, in 40 hours. Yeah, I mean, if you did it in 2 weeks' time, it
Yeah.
doesn't change anything.
But it does change something because, your memory could be fuzzy. Your
Yeah.
memory is
Mm.
best around the time of the occurrence of whatever happened. And
But
so the reporting should happen soon after whatever happened so that you are properly and accurately reflecting or documenting what happened.
Okay, but we got to remember what we're doing here. This is somebody who's the case has already been settled. The subject officer has been found responsible for doing what he did. He's already been found responsible for drunk driving. He has a criminal case pending, and we already have a civil disciplinary action going. It's just that this little nuance of you didn't do it, you didn't tell us in writing in 24 hours. Consequently, we're gonna add another 15 days on. No, no, we probably gonna. This is your first time drunk driving. Somebody was injured. Yeah, we're firing you. This we don't need the 15 days.
true, that's two separate. I mean, you're right. I mean, that's a different manual of rules section. I guess
We're
you
talking
may have,
about the reporting itself
yeah,
and not.
just straight reporting because this comes up inevitably in every investigation where we have serious misconduct is the reporting standards. All I'm saying is that I've run into this issue and I what I'm hearing is the officer who fails to report is much more severe than the person who reported but missed a step through this process. Okay. So what I like to propose is I don't want to throw it into performance of duty general because still think that there's a lot of danger with this. Like I, for one, want to keep it at 24 hours and it needs to be at 24 hours. It's
24.
so much what Kathy said about memory. It's also about evidence being lost and just getting the things in motion to start this criminal investigation. It has to be 24 hours.
Well
Yeah.
then, uh, the commanders have to get out and get the job done. Maybe you need to drive out to my man's house. Maybe you need to go and do the investigation. You can't just wait on them to come to you.
It's not, well, exactly. It's not so much so we're getting notifications from outside agencies and we obviously can't interfere with that. So it's not so much us, again, when the criminal investigation commences, we satisfied policy. I want an off ramp, however, for these technical violations, but still hold people accountable. And so what I propose is we have a section that gives that off ramp. Like if you fail to report misconduct, we're going to hold you to the highest standard of 15 days of suspension just to start. Okay. But if we have where these you reported it, but you missed a step, we can create a different section that is severe, but not as severe. That's all I'm proposing.
What would that look like though? Like its own violation at that point?
Yes.
That would be similar to performance of duty, but not that much of an out.
That's right. I mean,
Because again, I don't want the level. Hey, I come from that old cloth and saying if it's not documented, it didn't exist, it didn't happen, right? And so I also don't want folks to blow off the documentation and the most
right.
important part of it, and knowing that well, it's just gonna have worse be performance of duty anyway. So I also don't want it to be that much of an out either. So
No
what would
doubt.
you propose then?
Yeah, I
You have
would.
to think about it.
Well, yeah, I do. I like always need to think about it and work on this, but it's like I want to make sure this is very clear that the language that you're looking at here is extremely important, but the documentation and I need to have an off ramp there. And only because I'm literally dealing this right now with other cases, and it's hard for me because I want I the allegation of misconduct was reported and it was timely. We're just missing this one part where they just didn't write something to the effect. Someone else did it, but it just wasn't that person. And that's the problem with this policy. And I would agree with Deacon Lyles that it's just bad policy. So I just want to explore the option of having the severe failing to report misconduct, but everything that goes with it, having it as a lesser charge.
When you know that your job is to document and you don't document, I mean, that's a serious violation.
And the-
Maybe I'm
and we're-
just not understanding this, but I would think that if your job is to document something, you know that's your job, and you failed to do that. I don't see why we should be giving people a slap on the wrist.
I'm not, I don't want to make it sound like it's a slap on the wrist. I just don't want it as severe as covering something up. And that's
And
what this section is all about.
and I
But
don't
there
think
may
he
be
covered
there may
anything
be
up.
some covering up.
No, no.
There very well be.
Well, it can't be any covering up because he called his commanding officer and told him what happened.
Yes.
Where
Right,
it
but he
happened.
may not have told him everything. That's
And-
why
and
we
I-
need this
and I-
in writing, because the officer could say, "Well, I don't remember you telling me that."
Well, again,
He's saying, "I told you X, Y, Z," and the commanding officer is saying, "No, you told me X and Y. You didn't tell me Z." If you have it in documentation, nobody can say that you didn't report exactly what happened.
they don't have to report exactly everything that happened. They don't have to. There's a criminal charge pending, and they have a right, Fifth Amendment. They don't have to incriminate themselves. So
Right, but
all this
that's true.
notification, all this
But it says
notification,
any evidence. But look at what the requirements are under documentation requirements.
daytime location, name of people involved, alleged violation.
Your evidence or documentation supporting the report. I would think that's critical right there.
I think that's critical, and I wouldn't want to report that. I think that's incriminating. You haven't Mirandized me. You want me to you want me to tell you all the evidence? I don't have to give you the evidence to convict me. That's your job. So the idea of this is that he verbally told the commander, "I was in an incident. We've been using drunk driving," and he tells the location, the time, the date, and I was taken into custody. Bang! Now put that in writing. And I think it's the responsibility of the commanding officer to write down what was told to him. That's what I'm saying. We putting all the onus on the subject officer, but he's reporting this to you, so you write it down. That's what police officers do. When people come and say, "Look, my car was broken into," they don't write their report. The police ought to be writing the report.
Yeah. Right.
So if the officer says, according to the policy captain, "I'm calling to tell you I was in an accident last night. I was arrested for driving under the influence, and it happened in Walnut Creek, and I was arrested around 11 a.m. 11 p.m. Okay, which street was it? It was on blah 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 blah. Okay, that's it. Why isn't the commanding officer writing that down? That's the documentation. Why do we have to say you'll get 15 days if you don't write this down? Instead, I'm telling you about it. So if the guy said, I never called the officer, then the commanding officer takes a stand. No, I got a phone call at such time, and here's my report.
So if I say the commander receiving the
Verbal report.
I'll say receiving the allegations of misconduct shall
Receiving the oral allegations?
well, sometimes it does come in writing, and you know,
Okay.
one receives it in writing is not sufficient. So it's, I mean, again, I prefer it in writing because you know, it's hard to take notes and understand everything that's going on. So the commander receiving the allegations, I'll just say receiving because it could be orally or physically, shall
Write a brief report answering the following questions, addressing the following issues.
And Captain, when does the clock start for having to report this in writing within the 24 hours? At the point of observing the misconduct when it happens, or at the point of when the commanding officer was first notified?
so when it's known, right? So when a person knowingly is aware of the misconduct, that's when the 24 hours.
Whether it's their own misconduct or
Yes.
observing a peer's misconduct.
That's right.
Okay. And I am a little more sensitive to it being a peer, right? If you observe one of your fellow officers doing misconduct and you're compelled to report that and you do your duty and with everything that we want to see in that, and then you start having missteps, I mean, I don't know. It might just be me. I have a little more compassion with that than I do with somebody that's reporting their own misconduct and then failing to report and follow through with some of those steps, right? Anyhow.
That solves it right there, Brian.
So what happens if they don't document it all? Like in the case that I mentioned in San Francisco, where the officer didn't document.
Right.
They didn't report it
He didn't
either,
tell
right?
his commander, and neither did his girlfriend, who was also a police officer. She didn't say anything, nor did she document.
And that's
so. Does that fall under this section?
Yes.
And
so
that's the culture
what is the law right
change.
now? Well, what's the law right now? Or what is the punishment now if a person doesn't document it all? Doesn't make an oral report or a written report?
15 days.
Okay.
Well, right now, without us editing this, you have counseling all the way to termination.
And we had proposed 15 days.
Yeah,
previously.
so we're proposing the first offense to start at 15 days of termination. The second offense is termination, and then there's no third offense.
Exactly. If we were to get this through, this would be the most dramatic thing to change the culture of this department. This stuff right here.
So we're in agreement with this. We're just debating in terms of the process question and if there's a separate MOR violation that would trigger if they reported, but then failed to do so thoroughly or follow all the steps.
That's right.
Again, I have more compassion for the person that's reporting somebody else, right? Because you're speaking up, you're seeing something wrong, and you're speaking up on somebody else's misconduct, and you're not trying to sweep that under the rug or look the other way. I guess I'm trying to think of worst case scenario with 24 hours, right? You observe the misconduct, but you're also on patrol that night. You call it in, you're on patrol that night. An emergency happens, and then the 24 hour, and then you have to tend to that, and then you're on call, responding to a call, and then the 24-hour clock passes while you're doing that, and you're like, oh man, I forgot the 24-hour clock passed. So, but that officer went out of his way to report something that he saw, right, or that happened right before his shift started off duty or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of those scenarios, and in that case, about what would be the considerations in that? Because I guess that's what I'm trying to hear from you, Captain, that you would need you would still want to hold that line, but you would want something that's kind of in between the 15 days of termination, but not as lax as just performance duty.
Yeah, and all we have to do is we make this section very clear. The San Francisco incident, okay, that's very clear. Something happened, a crime occurred, you didn't report it, period. Okay, we want to hold you accountable to that, to start with 15-day suspension. The process of what you do with all of this is really in the M4.1 policy. And I rather argue it's easier for us to argue technical violations there based on the circumstances, okay, in a different section than this one. So it's either creating a new section. I don't want to necessarily call it a class 2 because then it looks like failing to report misconduct can be mitigated down to a class 2. I don't want to do that. I just want to craft this in a way where if it's 24 hours and 30 seconds, we have wiggle room there. Or they did document it, but they forgot to name or list all of the violations as you see here. You know, these little technical violations, I want to have grace.
You can always amend your report. And I don't think that ought to count against you for amending a report.
Yeah, no doubt. It's just, again, we look at things very binary in IA. If we list these as elements like a crime, if they fail any part of this, you're sustained, period.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you got some work to do, and I'm looking forward to see what you come up with on that. And I actually do think it's a fair negotiation, especially if we're saying that we're moving the counseling and determination to 15 days first offense. So yeah. I think it is fair to, if we're going to increase that standard from the very beginning, to also maybe look at a consideration so that we don't, that everything doesn't just get caught up in the wash either, while we're still trying to maintain that high standard.
Yep, no doubt.
Great. All right, time check. It is 7:29, and we had some really good conversations today that were continued from our last meeting. So it looks like we're going to be closing the year. And I did want to welcome Miss Marcia, Chair Emerita. You jumped into this spirited conversation, and you know, I think this is the type of exercise and dialogue that's needed for us and the community. I was really happy to see we had some community members on tonight. But I do want to give you a chance to, before we close out, Chair Emerita, to say anything, any thoughts that you have. Definitely want to bring you into the space.
Well, no, I really appreciate that I am included in this space. I did 47 years as a labor, employment, and discrimination attorney. And I don't know how many scores and scores of arbitrations. So I'm glad that I can add my voice to let you know where some of the holes might be in our pursuit of justice and winnable cases against some of the misconduct that occurs within the department. And I'm honored to serve with this group of community people like Deacon Lyles and Kathy Leonard. Certainly under your chairmanship, Ricardo, thank you so much. And the humble and very honest and forthright approach that I don't know what he is this week, Captain. I'm gonna, Captain. If I promoted you, good.
Good. He's been holding Captain pretty steady. So
okay. So I just want to wish everybody a really wonderful holiday season. As you know, I work with kids now, and we had our big winter wonderland today. Yeah. And yeah.
Beautiful.
So I'm often late because I really don't get finished until about 6:15 and trying to get home and get on the call. So thank you for your patience.
Absolutely. Chief of Staff, we want to close us out?
Yes.
Before we conclude before the holidays?
Yes. One of the things I wanted to just bring as a suggestion for future meetings, especially when we have guests joining, is that at the very beginning, if people can really just share what their expertise is, especially the people who are on this committee, because they're hearing how passionate Deacon Lyles is, and they have no idea he actually has police background, right? And I want to make sure that they understand there are subject matter experts on the call having this discussion. It's just not people were pulling, that are just there talking about it. You guys know what you're talking about. So at the very beginning of our calls, I'd love for people to just kind of say their name and what their subject matter expertise is in this area. So it's documented, and the people who join know that you guys are really sharing information that's pertinent.
Great. Agreed.
So that's great
Great.
suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great suggestion.
All right. Any closing thoughts, Miss Kathy, Deacon, or Captain Hubbard?
Well, I appreciate you all working hard and diligently this year on this ad hoc committee. I appreciate all of your points of view. I may not agree with you, but I understand that you guys are all coming from a good place, and that you're serious about reforming the police department. I hope you are. And I want to wish you all season's greetings. This will probably be our last meeting for the year. Am I right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So I'll see you next year, and Happy New Year to each and every one of you and your families.
You too. Thank you, everyone, for what you do. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. All right. You all have a
Good
good one.
night.
Have a great holiday, and we will see each other in the new year.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Take care.
Take care.
Good night.